The night was quiet in the small coastal town of Sako. Stars filled the sky like scattered diamonds, and the ocean waves made soft sounds against the shore. 7-year-old Yuna sat on the wooden deck behind her house, looking up at the stars with wonder in her eyes. Her father had taught her the names of many stars, and she liked to count them before bedtime. Her mother, Gion, called from inside the house. "Yuna, come inside now. It's getting late." "It's just 5 more minutes, Mom," Yuna called back. She hugged her knees to her chest and kept watching the sky. That was when she saw it. A light, brighter than any star, moving across the darkness. It grew larger and larger, dropping lower and lower. Yuna stood up, her small heart beating fast. She had seen shooting stars before, but this was different. This light had a shape. It was round and silver. It made no sound at all. The craft landed in the field behind their house, crushing the tall grass beneath it. Yuna wanted to run, but her feet would not move. Fear held her in place like invisible chains. A door opened in the side of the silver craft. Strange creatures walked out. They were tall and thin, with gray-green skin that looked like the scales of a fish. Their eyes were large and yellow, without any warmth or kindness in them. They wore black armor and carried weapons that glowed with blue light. One of them pointed at Yuna inside the house. Gin heard her daughter scream. She ran to the back door and saw something that would haunt her forever. 2 of the creatures were carrying Yuna toward their ship. The little girl kicked and fought, but she was so small and they were so strong. "No," Gion screamed. She ran toward them, but a 3rd creature raised its weapon. A beam of light hit her, and she fell to the ground, unable to move her body. Teiho was driving home from the naval base when he saw the lights in the sky above his neighborhood. His blood turned cold. He pressed the gas pedal to the floor and drove as fast as his old car could go. When he reached his house, he saw the silver craft rising into the air. He saw his wife lying on the grass, and he heard, fading into the distance, the crying of his daughter. The craft shot upward and disappeared among the stars in seconds. Taiho fell to his knees beside his wife. Gion, are you okay?" She could move again, but tears were streaming down her face. "They took her," she whispered. "They took our baby." Taiho looked up at the sky, his hands shaking with a rage he had never felt before. He was a naval officer. He had trained for combat. He had prepared for many enemies, but not this. Never this far above the earth, the slave ship called Crimson Tide moved through the darkness of space. Commander Relos walked through the cargo hold, inspecting his latest harvest. 37 specimens from the blue planet. Most were adults already being processed and prepared for sale. They would make good workers in the mines of distant worlds. But one specimen was different. The small one. The child Relos stopped in front of her cell. Yuna sat in the corner, her knees pulled up to her chest. She had stopped crying. Her eyes, red from tears, looked up at him without fear. There was something in those eyes that made Relos uncomfortable, though he did not know why. "This one is young," he said to his assistant, a nervous creature named Grell. "Young ones are valuable. They can be trained easily." Grell looked at his data pad, his webbed fingers trembling. "Commander, I must speak with you privately." Relos frowned, but followed Grell to a quiet corner of the ship. "What is it?" "The species, Commander. The humans. I have been reading the Galactic archives. The old records. The warnings?" "Warnings?" Relos laughed. "They are a primitive species. They have barely left their own planet. What warnings could there be?" Grell's voice dropped to a whisper. "They are listed in the Forbidden Index, Commander. The same list that contains the Krethic and the Voidwalkers. Species that should never be disturbed. Species that should never be provoked." Relos waved his clawed hand dismissively. "Old stories. Superstition. The humans have no fleet, no advanced weapons. They are nothing, Commander. Please listen." Grell was almost begging now. "The archives say that humans do not think like other species. When threatened, they do not calculate profit or loss. They do not consider the odds. They simply respond, with everything they have. The archives call them the species that does not know when to stop. Raylos grabbed Grell by the throat and lifted him off the ground. You forget your place. I am the commander of this vessel. I have raided 100 worlds. I have taken thousands of specimens. No one has ever come for them. No one ever will. He dropped Grell to the floor and walked away. In her cell, Una watched everything through the transparent wall. She could not understand their language, but she understood power. She understood cruelty. And deep in her young heart, she held on to one thing that the aliens could not take from her. Hope her father had told her stories. Stories about heroes who never gave up. Stories about people who crossed oceans and climbed mountains to save the ones they loved. Her father was a sailor, a warrior, a protector. He would come for her. She knew it with every part of her being. She closed her eyes and whispered in Korean, I'll wait for you, Dad. I'll be brave. Back on Earth. Taiho sat in the office of Admiral Yoonji, the highest-ranking officer in the Korean Navy. She was an old woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen many battles. She listened as Taiho told his impossible story. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment. Then she picked up her phone and made a call. Connect me to the United Nations Security Council. Emergency priority. Tell them. She paused and looked at Taiho. Tell them that we are not alone in the universe, and tell them that they have taken one of our children. She put down the phone and met Taiho's eyes. We will find her, Commander. I promise you. If we have to build ships that can fly to the stars, if we have to fight enemies we cannot imagine, we will bring your daughter home. Taiho nodded, his jaw tight with determination. I will not rest until she is safe. Then neither will I, Admiral Yoonji replied. Neither will any of us. The stars that night seemed cold and distant, but somewhere among them, a little girl was waiting, and on Earth, a father was preparing to do whatever it took to reach her. The universe had made a terrible mistake. It had threatened a human child, and it was about to learn what that meant. The news spread across the world like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every television, every phone, every computer screen showed the same images. The landing site in Sako. The burned grass where the alien ship had touched down. The face of a little girl named Una, smiling in her school photograph. People reacted in different ways. Some refused to believe it. Some were terrified. Some locked their doors and held their children close. But slowly, as more evidence came out, as more witnesses told their stories, the truth became impossible to deny. Humanity was not alone, and something out there was hunting them. The United Nations called an emergency meeting. Leaders from every country gathered in New York, their faces serious and afraid. They had spent centuries fighting each other over land, over money, over ideas. Now they faced something that made all those fights seem small and foolish. Taiho stood before them, still wearing his naval uniform. His eyes were tired from no sleep, but his voice was strong and steady. 3 days ago, my daughter was taken from my home. She is 7 years old. She is afraid of the dark. She sleeps with a stuffed rabbit named Bomi. His voice cracked slightly, but he continued. I am not here to ask for help. I am here to tell you that I will get her back. With your help or without it. The only question is whether humanity faces this together or alone. The room was silent. Then, one by one, leaders began to stand. The President of Korea, the Prime Minister of Japan, the President of the United States. The leaders of China, Russia, India, Germany, Brazil, they stood until every person in the room was on their feet. The Secretary General spoke for all of them. You will not be alone, Commander. None of us will be alone anymore. In the weeks that followed, the world changed faster than anyone thought possible. Old enemies became allies. Factories that had made cars now made weapons. Scientists who had competed for prizes now shared their secrets freely. Every resource, every mind, every hand was turned toward a single goal, building ships that could reach the stars. Dr. Hyok was a quiet man who had spent his life studying things most people could not understand. Quantum physics, the nature of space and time. He had won prizes for his work, but he had always felt that his discoveries were useless. Beautiful mathematics with no real purpose. Now he had a purpose, working with teams from every country. He studied the fragments of alien technology that had been found at various crash sites over the years. Governments had hidden these pieces, kept them secret, studied them in dark rooms. Now everything was shared. And HFY saw patterns in the alien designs that matched his own theories. "You can do this," he told Admiral Yunji during a late-night meeting. "Their faster-than-light drive works by folding space. It is exactly what I predicted in my papers. Give me 3 months. I will give you engines that can cross the galaxy." "You have 2 months," Yunji replied. "That child has already been gone too long." HFY nodded and returned to his work. He did not sleep more than 2 hours a night. Neither did anyone on his team. Coffee cups piled up. Eyes grew red and tired. But no one complained. No one stopped. In a shipyard in Korea, the first human warship took shape. It was called the Reckoning, and it was unlike anything ever built. Its hull was made of new alloys, stronger than anything before. Its weapons were based on alien designs, but improved by human engineers. Its engines, when HFY finally delivered them, could bend space itself. Taeho watched the ship being built every day. He stood on the observation deck, his hands gripping the railing, his eyes never leaving the growing vessel. Gillen came to stand beside him sometimes. They did not talk much. Words felt empty compared to what they were feeling. But they held hands, drawing strength from each other. "Do you think she's okay?" Gian whispered one night. Taeho pulled her close. "She is our daughter. She is strong like you. She is stubborn like me. She is okay, and she is waiting for us." Admiral Yunji built her fleet with the same determination. She was 70 years old, and many had expected her to retire. Instead, she worked harder than officers half her age. She chose her captains carefully. She trained her crews ruthlessly. She accepted only the best. "You will have one chance," she told her commanders during a briefing. "One chance to show the galaxy what humans can do. We must not waste it." The galaxy, meanwhile, was beginning to notice in the halls of the Galactic Council. Reports arrived about the strange activity on the small blue planet called Earth. Ships were being built at impossible speeds. Signals were being sent into space. Angry signals, demanding information about something called the Velthari Elder Mira of the Korath, read these reports with growing concern. She was old even by her species standards, and she had seen many things in her long life. But she had never seen a primitive species mobilize so quickly. "What happened?" she asked her aide. "What did the Velthari do?" "They raided the human homeworld," her aide replied. "They took specimens, as they always do, and the humans are upset about this?" "More than upset, Elder. They are building a war fleet, the largest fleet their species has ever created. They say they will not stop until they recover their people." Elder Mira closed her eyes. The Velthari had made a terrible mistake. The Korath had studied humans from a distance for many years. They knew things about this young species that others did not. They knew about human history, about their wars, about their stubbornness, about their terrifying ability to turn anger into action. "You must warn the Velthari," she said quietly. "They do not know what they have done." On Earth, the final preparations were complete. The Reckoning floated in orbit, its hull gleaming in the sunlight. Beside it, 16 more warships waited. 17 vessels in total. 17 ships carrying the hope and rage of an entire planet. Taeho stood on the bridge of the Reckoning, looking out at the stars. Admiral Yunji stood beside him. "Are you ready?" she asked. Taeho thought of his daughter's face. Her smile. Her laugh. The way she said "Daddy" when she wanted something. He thought of the aliens who had taken her, who had made her cry, who had stolen her from her home. "I have been ready since the moment they took her," he said. Eung nodded and turned to her communications officer. "Open a channel to all ships and broadcast on all frequencies. Let the galaxy hear this." She stepped forward and spoke in a voice that carried across the void. "This is Admiral Yunji of the United Earth Fleet. We are coming for our people. Anyone who stands in our way will be destroyed. Anyone who helps us will be rewarded. The Velthari have one chance to return what they stole. After that, there will be no more warnings. Only consequences. She paused, then added one final sentence. Humanity does not forgive. And humanity does not forget. The fleet jumped to light speed, leaving Earth behind. The hunt had begun. The Galactic Council had existed for 10,000 years. It was older than most civilizations, older than many stars. Its great chamber on the neutral world of Corinthax could hold representatives from 500 species. Today it was full. Every voice was talking about the same thing. Humans, Ambassador Veth of the Korith stood at the central platform, his tall gray body trembling slightly as he delivered his report. The holographic displays behind him showed images that made many representatives gasp. In 60 standard days, Veth said, the humans have built 32 warships. Each one is as powerful as a Velthari battlecruiser. Their construction time should have been measured in years. They did it in weeks. A Rithian diplomat raised a tentacle. How is this possible? They are a primitive species. They barely discovered space travel. They stopped sleeping, Veth replied simply. Our observers report that human workers have been operating in shifts around the clock. No breaks. No holidays. No rest. They have turned their entire civilization toward this single goal. Madness, someone muttered. No, Veth said quietly. Motivation. The Velthari took one of their children. Just one. And the humans have decided that this is unacceptable. The chamber erupted in noise. Some laughed at the foolishness of going to war over a single child. Others shifted nervously in their seats, remembering old stories about the humans they had dismissed as myths. Elder Mira stood slowly. The chamber fell silent. When an elder of the Korith spoke, everyone listened. I have studied the humans for 200 years, she said, her voice soft but clear. They are not like us. They do not think in terms of acceptable losses. They do not calculate the value of one life against many. To them, every life is precious. Every child matters. She paused. This makes them unpredictable. And unpredictable enemies are the most dangerous kind. The Council decided to send a diplomatic mission to Earth. Perhaps the humans could be reasoned with. Perhaps they could be convinced to seek justice through proper channels. Through council arbitration, through time, Elder Mira led the mission herself. Her ship arrived in Earth's solar system 3 days later. What she saw there made her hearts beat faster. The human homeworld was surrounded by activity. Ships were still being built. Satellites filled the space around the planet. Defense platforms were being assembled. And everywhere there were signals. Communications flying back and forth, plans being made, orders being given. You're not stopping, her aide said with wonder. Even now, they continue to build. They will not stop, Myra replied. Not until this is finished. She was allowed to land on Earth and speak with Admiral Yunji. The meeting took place in a simple military building, not a grand palace. Yunji sat across from her, a cup of coffee in her hand, her eyes hard and unreadable. The Galactic Council offers its assistance, Mira began. We can impose sanctions on the Velthari. We can demand the return of your people. These things take time, but justice will be served. Yanji took a sip of her coffee. How much time? The council must vote. Evidence must be presented. A judgment must be reached, perhaps. 5 to 10 years. Yunji set down her cup. 5 to 10 years. My people have been slaves for 2 months. Do you know what the Velthari do to slaves in 5 to 10 years? Mira was silent. They break them, Yunji continued. They beat them. They work them until their bodies give out. They sell children to the highest bidder. In 5 to 10 years, Elder, there may be nothing left to save. But war is. Myra searched for the right word. War is such a waste. So many will die. Yes, Yanji agreed. Many will die. But not my people. Not if I can help it. She leaned forward. Your council has had 10,000 years to stop the Velthari. 10,000 years to end the slave trade. You did nothing. We have had 10 weeks, and we have built a fleet. Now, Elder, I suggest you stay out of our way." The message was broadcast across all frequencies, as Yunji had promised. Every species in the galaxy heard it. Some thought the humans were brave. Some thought they were insane. The Velthari thought they were bluffing. They were wrong. On Velthera Prime, the homeworld of the Velthari Collective, Commander Relos was enjoying his reward. The slaves he had captured were sold at high prices. He had been given a promotion and a medal. He spent his days in comfort, drinking expensive wine and laughing at the foolish humans who thought they could challenge the might of the Veltari. Then the reports started coming in. Human fleet detected at the border. His communications officer reported. "How many ships?" Relos asked lazily. 32, Commander." Relos laughed. 32 ships against the Velthari Navy. We have 200 vessels in our home fleet alone. Send a squadron to destroy them.
Yes.
10 ships were sent. They never returned. The smile faded from Relis's face. He sent 20 more ships. Same result. Then 50. The human fleet cut through them like a knife through paper. The reports from surviving ships were terrifying. The humans fought with a fury that seemed almost supernatural. They did not retreat. They did not surrender. When their ships were damaged, they kept fighting. When their weapons failed, they rammed enemy vessels with their own hulls. "They are insane," one Velthari captain reported before his ship exploded. "They fight like they have nothing to lose." The Velthari High Council finally understood the danger. They ordered Relos arrested and brought before them. The commander who had been so proud now trembled with fear. "What have you done?" The High Chancellor demanded. "What madness made you attack these creatures?" "They were primitive," Relos stammered. "The archives said they were weak." "Easy targets, the archives." The Chancellor's voice rose to a shriek. "Did you not read the warnings?" The prohibitions. These humans were on the Forbidden Index for a reason. Relos had no answer. He had ignored the warnings. He had thought himself above such superstitions. Now, his people would pay the price, far away. In a processing station, orbiting Velthora Prime, Yuna sat in her cell and listened. She had learned to understand some of the alien language by now. She heard the guards talking about the human fleet, about the battles, about the fear that was spreading through the Velthari Empire. She smiled for the first time in weeks. "I told you," she whispered to the other children who had been captured with her. "I told you they would come." A small boy from Brazil looked at her with wide eyes. "But we are so far away. How will they find us?" Yuna thought of her father, his strong hands, his warm smile, the stories he told her about, never giving up. "They will find us," she said with certainty, "because that is what humans do." Above the planet, the first human ships exited hyperspace. Their weapons were charged. Their crews were ready. And painted on the hull of the lead ship, the Reckoning, was a message in Korean that Taiho had written himself. It translated to, "A father is coming for his daughter." The universe had been warned. The consequences had begun. The battle for Velthera began at dawn, though in space there was no real dawn, only the cold light of distant stars. 200 Velthari warships formed a defensive line around their homeworld. Behind them, orbital stations and defense platforms added their weapons to the wall of protection. The Velthari commanders were nervous but confident. They outnumbered the humans nearly 7-1. Numbers would win this fight. They were wrong. Admiral Yunji stood on the bridge of the Reckoning, watching the enemy formation on her tactical display. Beside her, Taiho waited with barely controlled impatience. His daughter was somewhere on one of those stations. So close. So very close. "All ships, this is the Admiral Yunji," spoke into her communicator. "Remember why we are here. Remember who we are fighting for? Today we show the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity. No surrender. No retreat. Only victory." The fleet responded as one. Only victory. The first exchange of fire turned space into a storm of light and death. Human ships moved in patterns that no alien tactician had ever seen. They split into small groups, attacked from multiple angles, supported each other with perfect timing. When a Velthari ship focused on one human vessel, 3 others would strike from behind. The Velthari fought the way they had always fought: formation, discipline, overwhelming firepower. It had worked against every enemy for thousands of years. Against the humans, it failed. Human ships did not behave logically. When damaged, they did not pull back for repairs. They kept fighting. When surrounded, they did not surrender. They exploded their own reactors, taking enemy ships with them. Pilots with destroyed weapons flew their vessels directly into Velthari hulls, turning themselves into living missiles. A Velthari commander named Nesser watched in horror as his fleet was torn apart. "What are these creatures?" he screamed at his officers. "Why won't they die?" His communications officer, pale and trembling, answered in a whisper. "Sir, we intercepted one of their communications. A human pilot, his ship burning, his weapons gone." "Do you know what he said before he rammed our flagship?" "What?" "This is for the children." That was all. "This is for the children." Desser slumped in his chair. How could you fight an enemy who gladly died for such a simple reason? 9 hours into the battle, the Velthari defensive line collapsed. 163 of their ships were destroyed or disabled. The humans had lost 11 vessels, 11 ships, with crews who had known they might not come home, who had chosen to fight anyway. Yunji did not celebrate. There was no time. All transport ships begin assault on the orbital station. Intelligence reports indicate the human captives are held on level 7. Rescue teams prepare for insertion. Taiho had begged to be part of the rescue team. Yunji had refused at first. "You are too emotional." "You might make mistakes." "She's my daughter," Taiho had replied. "I will not make mistakes. I will not allow myself to make mistakes. Please, Admiral, let me bring her home." In the end, Yunji had agreed. She understood. If it had been her child, nothing in the universe could have kept her away either. The assault shuttle shook violently as it approached the station. Velthari defense guns tried to shoot it down, but human fighters screened the transports, sacrificing themselves to protect the soldiers inside. Taiho held his weapon tightly, his heart pounding, his mind focused on one thing only: Yuna, his little girl. His reason for everything. The shuttle crashed through the station's hull. Its reinforced nose designed for exactly this purpose. Emergency doors sealed behind them as the rescue team poured out into the smoke-filled corridor. Sergeant Murray led the way. She was a small woman, but fierce, with eyes that had seen combat on 3 continents. Now she was seeing combat among the stars, and she had never felt more alive. "Move," she shouted. "Level 7 is 3 decks up. Watch for ambushes." The Velthari guards fought to stop them. They were not cowards. They were soldiers defending their station, their prisoners, their pride. But they had never faced anything like this. The humans moved with a desperation that was almost frightening. They did not hesitate. They did not pause. They simply kept coming, climbing over their own wounded. Pushing through walls of fire. On level 7, Yuna heard the explosions. The other children huddled in the corners of their cells, crying with fear. But Yuna stood at the transparent wall, watching, waiting. "They're here," she said quietly. "I told you. They're here." A guard ran past her cell, his weapon raised. Seconds later, he flew backward, struck by human gunfire. Smoke filled the corridor. Alarms screamed. And then, through the chaos, Yuna saw a face she knew. Murray was the first to reach the cell block. She shot the lock off the main door and stepped inside, her team spreading out to secure the area. And there, in the 3rd cell on the right, she saw a small girl with dark hair and calm eyes, looking back at her. "Yuna?" Murray asked, hardly daring to believe it. The girl nodded. Murray activated her communicator with shaking hands. "Package secured. I repeat, package secured. All teams, we have her." The message spread through the fleet in seconds. Cheers erupted on every ship. Soldiers who had been fighting desperately found new strength. The battle was almost won, but this news, this confirmation that their mission had succeeded, lifted them higher than any victory could. On the reckoning, Taiho heard the words and felt his legs give out beneath him. He fell to his knees on the shuttle floor, tears streaming down his face. 2 months. 2 months of fear, of rage, of desperate hope. And now, finally, it was over. Sir, one of his soldiers said gently, "We need to move. The extraction point is this way." Taiho wiped his eyes and stood. "Right, let's go bring her home." They met at the extraction point. Taiho saw his daughter from across the corridor, small and thin but alive, holding Murray's hand. Their eyes met, and time seemed to stop. "Daddy." Yuna broke free and ran toward him. Taiho ran toward her. They collided in the middle of the corridor, and he lifted her into his arms, holding her so tightly that he was afraid he might hurt her. But he could not let go. He would never let go again. "I knew you would come," Yuna whispered into his neck. "I knew it." "I will always come for you," Taiho replied, his voice breaking. "Always, no matter how far, no matter how long. You are my daughter, and I will always find you." Round them, the battle continued. Ships fought and died. Stations burned. The Velthari Empire crumbled. But in that corridor, a father held his daughter, and for that moment, nothing else mattered. The extraction was successful. All human captives were recovered, along with hundreds of slaves from other species who the Velthari had been holding. The rescue shuttles returned to the fleet, and Admiral Yunji finally allowed herself a small smile. "Mission accomplished," she said quietly. Then, louder, into the fleet-wide channel. "All ships. This is the Admiral. Our people are safe, but we are not finished. Set course for Velthara Prime. It is time for the Velthari to answer for their crimes." The fleet turned toward the planet below. The Velthari High Council, watching from their palace, transmitted an unconditional surrender. They would accept any terms. They would pay any price. They only begged the humans to stop. Youngji looked at Taiho, who stood on the bridge with Yuna, asleep in his arms, exhausted but safe. "What do you think?" she asked. "Should we show them mercy?" Taiho looked down at his daughter's peaceful face. He thought of all the pain, all the fear, all the nights she had spent alone in that cell. Part of him wanted to burn the Velthari homeworld to ash, but another part of him, the part that his daughter had inherited, spoke instead. "Yes," he said slowly. "We show them mercy. Because that is what makes us human. We are better than them. We have to be." Yunji nodded. "Then mercy it is. But with conditions? The slave trade ends. The captives go free. All of them. From every world, a surrender was accepted. The war was over, and across the galaxy. Billions of slaves looked up at the stars and dared to hope for the first time in generations. Freedom was coming. The humans had made sure of it. 1 year had passed since the fall of the Velthari Collective. 1 year since a father held his daughter in a burning corridor and promised to never let her go again. 1 year since the galaxy learned to fear and respect the small blue planet called Earth. The universe had changed. The Velthari Empire no longer existed. Their leaders had been tried before a galactic court for crimes against sentient life. Some were imprisoned. Some were executed. Their military was disbanded, their slave markets closed. Their vast wealth distributed to the species they had wronged. Billions of former slaves returned to their homeworlds or found new homes on Earth and other welcoming planets. Humans had not just freed their own people, they had freed everyone. When asked why they had gone so far, why they had risked so much for strangers, the answer was always the same. Because no one deserves to be a slave. No one. The Galactic Council had offered humanity a seat among their number. Not as a junior member, not as an observer, but as a full voting member with all rights and privileges. It was an honor that usually took species thousands of years to earn. Humans had earned it in months. Some elder species objected. They said the humans were too young, too violent, too unpredictable. But Elder Mira spoke for those who understood. "The humans showed us something we had forgotten," she said to the council chamber. "They showed us that some things are worth fighting for. Not power, Not territory, not resources, but people, individual lives. We became so civilized that we forgot how to be brave. The humans reminded us. Admiral Yunji represented Earth at the council. She wore her uniform proudly, the medals on her chest earned in battles that would be remembered for generations. Beside her stood Tai-Ho, now promoted to captain, and Dr. Hayok, whose engines had made the impossible possible, and there, holding her father's hand, stood Yuna. She was 8 years old now. A little taller, a little older, but still the same girl who had watched the stars from her backyard in Sako. She had been invited to speak at the memorial ceremony, and she had accepted without hesitation. The memorial for the lost stood in the center of a great plaza on Corinthax, the neutral world where the council met. It was a simple structure, a tall pillar of white stone surrounded by water. The names of every being ever taken by slavers were carved into its surface. There were so many names that they seemed to cover every inch of the stone. Millions of lives remembered. Millions of stories told. Representatives from 40 species stood in silent rows as Yuna walked to the base of the memorial. She carried a single flower, a Korean rose called Mugangwa, the national flower of her homeland. Her small shoes made soft sounds on the stone path. She placed the flower at the base of the pillar and stepped back. For a moment, she just stood there, looking up at all those names. Then she turned to face the crowd. "My name is Yuna," she said, her voice clear and strong despite her youth. "1 year ago, I was taken from my home. I was put in a cell. I was scared and alone." She paused. "But I was never without hope, because I knew that my family would come for me. I knew that my people would never stop looking." She looked at her father, who stood with tears in his eyes. "They came for me. They came for all of us. Not because we were important or special, but because we are human. And humans do not leave anyone behind." She turned back to the memorial. "This stone has many names. People who were lost, people who were hurt, people who did not come home." Her voice grew softer. "But this stone also carries a promise that no one will be forgotten, a promise that we will protect each other, a promise that the strong will defend the weak." She reached out and touched the cold stone with her small hand. "We came home," she said, "and we brought everyone with us." The plaza was silent. Then, slowly, applause began. It grew louder and louder until it seemed to shake the very air. Species who had never agreed on anything stood together and clapped for a human child who had suffered and survived. Later that day, Elder Mira wrote in her personal journal. She had been keeping records for 3 centuries, documenting the rise and fall of empires, the discoveries of scientists, the wars of generals. But this entry was different. "I have studied warfare for 300 years, she wrote. "I have seen fleets that covered the stars. I have seen weapons that could destroy worlds. But I have never seen anything as powerful as what the humans have shown us." She paused, her writing instrument hovering over the page. "They do not fight for conquest. They do not fight for glory. They fight for love, for their children, for their families, for their friends. They turn their rage into rescue, their anger into action, their pain into purpose." She continued writing. "The galaxy feared them because of their violence, but I think we should fear them for a different reason. We should fear them because they are good, because they chose mercy when they could have chosen destruction, because they freed slaves that were not their own, because a 7-year-old girl, after everything she suffered, asked only that others be saved too." She set down her writing instrument and looked out her window at the stars. "The humans are young. They make mistakes. They are loud and messy and chaotic, but they are also beautiful. And I believe with all my hearts that they will make this galaxy a better place." On Earth, life slowly returned to normal. The shipyard still operated, but now they built exploration vessels instead of warships. The scientists who had created weapons now created medicines and technologies to help the freed slaves rebuild their lives. Tai-Ho and Jian took Yuna home to Sako. They rebuilt their house, planted a garden, tried to find peace after everything they had been through. Some nights Yuna still woke up crying from nightmares. Some nights, Taiho walked the halls, unable to sleep, checking the locks on every door. But there were good days too. Days when Yuna played in the yard with her friends, both human and alien. Days when the family sat together and watched the sunset over the ocean. Days when the past seemed far away and the future seemed bright. One evening, Yuna sat on the deck behind her house, looking up at the stars. Her father came to sit beside her. "Aren't you cold?" he asked. She shook her head. "I like watching the stars, even after everything." Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. "Especially after everything. The stars are not scary, Dad. They're beautiful. And now I know that there are good people out there too. People who helped us. People we helped." Taiho put his arm around her. "You're very wise for an 8-year-old. Mom says I get it from her." He laughed. "She's probably right." They sat together in comfortable silence. Father and daughter, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead. Far away. In a classroom on a distant planet, a young student asked their teacher a question. "Why are the humans so feared? They seem small and weak compared to many species." The teacher, an old Korath with gentle eyes, smiled softly. "They are feared," the teacher replied, "because they are the only species in the galaxy who will go to war for a single child. They will cross the universe for one lost daughter. They will burn empires for one crying boy. They will never stop, never give up, never surrender, until their people are safe." The teacher paused, letting the words sink in. "Now imagine," the teacher continued, "what they would do for a planet. Imagine what they would do for a friend. Imagine what they would do for you. If you were in danger and asked for their help." The student thought about this for a long time. "They sound like good allies," the student finally said. "They are," the teacher agreed. "The very best kind." And somewhere among the stars, a little girl named Yuna dreamed of adventures yet to come, safe in the knowledge that she would never be alone again. The universe was vast and dark and full of dangers. But humanity had taken its first steps into that darkness. And wherever they went, they carried the light with them. The light of hope. The light of love. The light that would never go out.